Welcome back to Morgan on Purpose, the podcast. Today we're diving into a topic that every business owner will face at some point, exit planning. How do you step away from the business you've poured your life into without hurting yourself, your family, or the business itself? So to help unpack this, I'm so excited to have Ryan Ray on the podcast today. Now, you'd think that a North Dakota boy, I live in Minnesota, but I'm a North Dakota boy at heart, and a Texas guy would have very little in common other than maybe a love for wide open space and cattle. But we both share a love for our favorite, the best NBA team ever, the Minnesota Timberwolves. So I'm doubly excited to have Ryan on. Ryan specializes in helping entrepreneurs and business owners get out of the bottleneck and create a business that can thrive without them. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Yes, excited to be here, and it's good to connect. And so thank you for that introduction.
We'll try not to make this a Timberwolves hot take episode.
Oh, well,
and we'll stick to the topic at
okay,
hand.
we will do our best. So
yeah. Look, so I've been looking forward to this conversation about exit planning. It's not just about finances, right? It's not just about the business finances, the personal finances. It's also about mindset, identity, preparation. Many business owners struggle to detach themselves from the company they've built. In your experience, why is it so hard for owners to step back, even when they know they need to?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a lot there. I think it for each owner can be different. But if as humans, we think that people think about us more than they do, right? And so that's just our tendency. Whether it's our spouse or our kids, we presume that they think about us more than they do. And so the more involved in your business you are, you begin to presume that your customers, your employees, they think about you more than they do. And this is not to be derogatory. It's just saying that, hey, you're important. You're providing a paycheck or a service or a product, and that's really important. But, once you die, they're not going to think about you that much. Your family and friends will for a little bit, but your employees, they're going to go, oh, yeah, I work for so-and-so. And if we just paused and said, well, let's name all the teachers through grade school, through high school that we had, we'd struggle to do that. And they were very influential. That we spent an hour with them a day learning a subject. We couldn't even name probably 30 friends from high school. We can't name our neighbors from 15 years ago. So if we start to look at it, and once we realize that, we go, okay, wait, I need to provide a really good business that provides good employment and a good product or service. I'm not diminishing that. I want to do that. But also, I got to realize that it's not a me-centric universe. Like, people won't think about me that much. And I'll end with this. My grandfather was a civil engineer. And the city that I grew up in, he helped design a bunch of stuff. And he was the city engineer of Monroe for a period of time. And if you went back to Monroe, Louisiana today, there's no statue of him. And no one would know who he is. And he's only been dead 10 years ago. And he's designed a lot of stuff tied to the city, not 100%, but some key buildings and stuff like that. But people don't know who he is. And I'm not saying that, and I thought he's a great dude. My grandfather, I love the guy, right? Mm-hmm. But people just don't know. And so once you begin to realize, okay, hey, my job is to provide a good product, service, and wage for and opportunity for my employees. That's my job. Let me do that. And by removing myself from the business, I can do that. And oddly enough, I can go do other things. And then if you want to be impactful in the community, you now have the time to go do that in a way that's not tied to your product services. So I'll stop there. But that's some of my thoughts. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so well said. I often think of this within virtues and anti-virtues, just because that's kind of how my brain works. But what I heard from you was there's an element of hubris, thinking that it's all about you, or it has to be all about you. And then to move beyond that, there's a strong element of humility, right? It's like we have to learn humility to elevate others, and detachment, right? We have to detach from this idea that we have to be 100% involved. That said, it's not just about virtue or emotional attachment or whatever. It can also be very practical. So owners often feel like they are the bottleneck. In fact, they often are the bottleneck. I am an owner of a business and I feel like the bottleneck all the time, and it drives me nuts. So everything goes through them and they're critical to every decision. Why do you have to weigh in on this? Uh, Whether that's because you're micromanaging or just because you just haven't built team or systems. Anyways, how do you help your clients untangle themselves so the business can run independently or run without their day-to-day effort?
Yeah. Well, and I think we should pause here just for a second and say that, I'm a solo practitioner. So if you're hearing this, you're going, Ryan, are you not the bottleneck? And I'm like, well, it depends on what we mean by bottleneck, right? So a lot of owners don't really have the end goal in mind. And once you have the end goal in mind, you can then begin to figure out where you want to be involved in the business at. But because we don't have that, we don't really know what's going on. So for me, my play is I'm investing in certain stocks and perhaps real estate. That's kind of my play. I don't really want to build a sellable business. I've done that before and I've exited that. I don't want to do that again. That's not what I want to do. But a lot of owners I talk to, they don't understand that they've built something that is a trades-based business, let's say, but they build it more like a lifestyle business, and then they go to exit. It's just not worth what they need to be worth. That's the worst spot to be in. So you got to understand what's your goal. Like, what is my goal? How do I get there? And then when you think about removing yourself from the business, I use what I call the focus flow grid. And so it's got 4 grids. I can send this to you when we get off if you want it. But the top right is it's called the flow zone. The top left is called the grind zone. Now, those 2 zones you can't escape because if you think about the grind zone, an owner might be doing taxes, which are really high ROI. You got to do those. Even if you don't think about making money, prevents you from going to jail. Taxes, it could be HR, it could be legal, it could be stuff like that. And let's top left. The top right is the flow zone, and that's really where you want to be at. What happens is, on the bottom left, I have the drain zone. And so what we do is we say, well, I want to be involved in closing sales. Like, that's my specialty. Well, we go and set the appointments, we send the cold emails, we do all the stuff along the way that really is in the drain zone. It drains us from being the most effective we can. Instead of going, wait, I don't got to do market research. I need to know this thing about market research. I need to know, what the best script is or whatever it is, depends on the industry. I can pay someone to go do that for me. But we seep into that drain zone, and then we're supposed to be in the flow zone, right? And so we don't really know what our end goal is. So for me, as someone who's a solo business, I use contractors to help me stay out of that drain zone as much as I can, right? Or I'll use automation or AI. If you're a bigger company, you go, okay, well, where is the flow zone at? And what I tell owners is, let's say you're a trades company. The flow zone right now for you might just be you need to focus on closing deals. Great. But as you do this, the real flow zone for you might be going to meet with city council, the mayor, not to promote your business, but to be that local authority in the community where people go, wait, the new sprinkler system law or whatever the law is, so-and-so company just talked about that. And they come to you to hear about whatever that new change is because you interviewed the fire commissioner or whoever it might be. And so the flow zone can move up as you replace yourself. And then all of a sudden, we talk about 80-20, it changes where you're at. And so you go, well, I was doing sales, that was important, but now I'm meeting with certain people, I'm having podcasts or doing this. And so it moves up the value ladder and you replace yourself in the sales. And so that's where you want to look at. And when you understand the end goal and you kind of work it backwards, kind of figure it out, that's where you kind of at. So I use that, the focus flow grid, but I know we don't have an example of it, but I'll use that a lot for stuff to help.
It's kind of like a moving target, right? So as your business evolves, as you evolve, you're going to be in flow doing different activities.
Yep.
And
That's
the
exactly
things
right.
that are draining you, as I'm hearing, that's a good sign that, hey, that can be delegated somehow. Let's figure out how to delegate that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. So I'm pulling the grid up here so I can kind of talk through it as I'm looking. So like, let's say, you've heard me say this before, I think more businesses should have a fractional CFO. I'm not one, so I'm not self-promoting here. I'm just saying, like, I think that's a big need. Okay. But right now, you've got to do your taxes, you got to figure out your accounts, balances, your cash flow, all that stuff. Well, that's a high ROI activity. And maybe you can't give that up because you can't afford a CFO or a fractional CFO or a controller. But it doesn't mean that all of that work has to be done by you. You can then delegate it. So I really, when I start working with a client, the first 2 or 3 weeks is really miserable because we're tracking their time in 15-minute increments, and we're grading it based upon the zone and the dollar amount. And then we're saying, okay, well, hey, what I see a lot of times is people will say, well, I did this for, an hour. It's like, well, hold on. Let's break that down. What did you actually do in that hour? Well, I did this, 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 and this. Like, right. So 2 of those things we could have delegated, we could have hired out, we could have outsourced. The other 2 that you need to do, I'm not saying don't do the legal work. You're not a lawyer, but don't do the work that you need to do. The other thing is the fun zone. The fun zone is a distraction because we'll have a brainstorming session, and we love those. Like, who doesn't love a brainstorming session with no outputs? Well, brainstorming without outputs is just a waste of time. And so, like, when I look at the stats, I did a live stream on this yesterday. The stats say that owners waste an hour and a half a day. And I think that's a lie. I think they waste a lot more than that. Not being degrading. I'm just saying we're not honest as humans. Like, I waste more than an hour and a half a day. And so, yeah, I really want them to think about these zones. Where are they at? Where can they delegate? Where can they hire? And then how do they ascend the zones so that they are actually doing the most impactful thing? And for some, that's fully leaving the business. It's kind of a myth, but you know what I mean? It's really removing themselves from the business. For some, they still want to do high ticket sales. Cool. That's great. But they understand the end goal is that they're going to sell for less. And so they got to extract more now or whatever it might be, but they understand those dynamics. And it's really a conversation, and each owner's a little bit unique because I'll wrap up here. I got a client right now. He said, I want to work till I die. Right. So the strategy with him is a lot different than someone who wants to sell. And so you just got to understand where they're at and what they're wanting to do.
Yeah. And so if you're listening to this, we'll figure out a way to get that in the show notes, Ryan's sheet there, I'm sure.
I'll send it to you.
We get a link or something like that to that. Let's talk about timing of business sale. Some business owners think they need to wait until everything is perfect before stepping away. Obviously, perfection is a moving target, right? What does that actually mean? How do you advise people on when it's the right time to exit or at least start delegating key responsibilities?
Yeah, I love this question because we talk about the Timberwolves, right? And the goal for the Timberwolves is to win the NBA title, right? So they understand to win the title, they have to make the playoffs, right? They have to make the playoffs. They can't win the title without making the playoffs. And to make the playoffs, they have to hit these benchmarks. And then the better those benchmarks they hit, the odds of winning the title go up. So they understand all of that. And as an owner, if we don't stop and say, my goal is to either shut this thing down, I've extracted all the wealth out and put it in stocks, real estate, whatever, or to exit, then we wait too long and we find out, oh, we weren't even playing the right game. We were playing in some other league. We didn't even know that league doesn't even have this thing. So it depends on the owner. I'm saying a lot, it depends. It depends on the problem. So if it's customer concentration, let's take that. I see that a lot. Customer concentration, which means that 1, 2, 3 customers are a huge percentage of your revenue. That can take years to unwind. It can take years because let's say you're doing $7 million in revenue and 2 customers are $4 million or combined $4 million of revenue, right? Well, to lower that down, it's going to take a long time because not only do you have to find new customers, you have to show that they stay around and you got to keep them. So that's going to take a few years just to get that process worked out. If you're below the SBA range, my advice is always to talk to an SBA lender to see what they will lend on the business because they will tell you, we will lend X amount of dollars on your business today if you had a buyer. And that kind of doesn't mean you got to go for that, but you know the numbers. If you're above that SBA range, it's a little bit different. But for the SBA guys, I found that's the most effective thing to do is send them to the bank because it's not me, it's not the broker, not the buyer. This is what the bank's going to lend. It doesn't mean you got to take it, but you understand now if I want more, you understand the math at least, how I got to fix this business to make it sell for more.
Yeah.
So the answer is it depends, unfortunately, but it could be years depending on the issue, right? It could be 6 months. I've seen them closing from the first time I talked to an owner I had a deal last year. It used to be $52 million by the time it was all settled, but it closed for $40 million cash on close, cash on day of close. And that was like a 9-month process. But that's a big business, right? They had moved through a lot of stuff to get there. A lot of smaller businesses that we deal with, they don't have that kind of runway to get $40 million. They're not ready for that because they haven't built stuff out right.
Yeah, and obviously it's going to depend on the industry. It's going to depend on the size of the business. It's going to compare on how you compare to other businesses and owners in your industry. And so everything is unique. Which brings me to another one is how do you balance, and I think this is something that I'm passionate about, obviously, in my seat as a wealth advisor. How do you balance, success of business goals with making sure that family's also taken care of, family goals are taken care of? Something that I know you care a lot about is balance, right? Being there with your family as well, being a full person. In your conversations with owners, how do you navigate those types of things as well?
Yeah, oh, man, you're asking some good questions. And if you're an owner, first thing I would say is there's no one size fits all answer to these questions. They're always nuanced, and that's the thing I hate about. I love these type of things because they show this, but I hate about social media content because you got to be very generic, very bland, and it's just like you can't get the depth that you need. Okay, so family time. The first thing is, for me, to your point, a family time. I try to do my client work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm not saying it's always. I have Thursday, Friday open if I need it, but I try to do that. And so if you're an owner, if we go back to kind of that grid I was saying, the first thing I'm going to do is say, hey, well, how much time are we actually just spending on things that people are better at than you? You're not the best at sales, legal, ops, finance, HR. You're just not. No one is. No one is. I'm not. You're not. We're all. No one is. It's cool. We can just take that and own that we're not the best. So who can we afford to hire? And it depends on how much, what the owner's netting, and so how much leverage they have and staff and stuff like that. The next thing is, I had an owner the other day say, well, for your fee, I need a 10x ROI. And I was like, well, it depends on what you mean by 10x. If you want 10x cash in your bank, great. But what about the stress relief? Because you just told me that you're stressed about cash flow. Well, what if I put you in contact with someone, a fractional CFO? What if I put you in contact with someone who shows you that yes, it's not a problem, or no, it's not a problem? What is that worth? How do you measure that? So I don't like trying to be, hey, I'm pay me whatever. I want them to understand like how we measure ROI is a little bit different, I think, than what the online space teaches you. And so I'm trying to show owners a big thing I don't like is I'm selling time for money. I don't like that because we're all selling time for money. If you buy a Powerball ticket today and you win $1 billion, you had to have the money to have the gas, the car, the resources, the time to go buy that Powerball ticket. If you invest $1,000 in the VTSAX and it compounds, you had to have the time. So what I want to do is show owners we want to make this too hard to calculate. That's really what we're saying. We want to get too hard to calculate. And well, how do you calculate family time? I took my family yesterday. The new Mario movie came out. We're recording this on April 2nd. So I took them yesterday to see the new Mario movie. My daughter's birthday is tomorrow, the 3rd. She turns 7. How do you value that? Like, how do you value that? There's no value there. So if you're struggling with how do you delegate, well, how do you value taking your family to the opening day of a movie? There's no value there. So I really want owners to understand the online talk has to be pragmatic because this is short. You can't get into nuance. But the real world is not that way. So if you really value family time, well, let's sit down. What is the value of that? How do you value that? Taking your wife on a date, going to coaching your son's team, stuff like that. So there's no ROI metric for that. That's just whatever you want to put on it. Okay, well, going back to the grid again, the odds are for anyone listening, including Ryan, we're doing stuff in the drain zone that we can delegate. And the more meticulous we are about tracking that, the better we can remove that from ourselves and the easier we can find time for our family and we can provide good jobs to people, right? So going back to that thing you said earlier, you can provide a good job to someone if you realize that you can't do it and they can do it better than you, right?
One thing I love about that framing is, the intangibles of life are what matter, and they're what gives life meaning, and they're what you're going to value over the long term, especially looking back, which is there's that, Covey exercise of being on your deathbed. What do you regret, right? Who did you wish you could be? That sort of stuff. I also love the framing of, I think in big business, corporate business, it can feel very personal, right? And that it is all about the numbers and the money and all that stuff. Small business is so personal, right? And the opportunity to give someone a good job that you love working with and loves working with your business and loves the customers or the work or whatever it is, like that's priceless. It's priceless, right? especially when you, and even we can make just a business argument of like the cost of turnover is ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, if someone's underperforming, like, why not just have a hard conversation with them as opposed to firing, trying to get in the next person or whatever it is, right? Like, there are solutions to this when we just confront reality, because we're all trying to achieve, we're all kind of the heroes of our own journey, right? And someone else, it's not antagonism to you, it's a hero of their own journey as well. For listeners thinking about their own exit, maybe they haven't started to articulate this to their team, to other professional partners. What would be the first 3 steps you recommend they take to get themselves and their business ready? If you're going to simplify it all, 3 steps, what would you do?
Okay, 3 steps. I'm going to assume for this 3-step model that they understand the end game. So, right, so that's because if they haven't, there'd be different 3 steps. So they understand the end game, what they're working towards. The first step is they need to have their team, and I say their team, this could be, depending on the company, the size, it could be key staff or a larger team. They need to have bonuses set up. Bonuses that are tied to the key staff or the whole team, depending on what's going on, that are tied to the exit of the business, right? So we want to sell for $7 million. You know that you need $6 million. Just to make some numbers up. Great. Your people are going to work hard, and you're going to set up bonuses that are going to incentivize them to push harder to get you what you want and them what they want, right? So you want to have that in place. So that's number one. You want to have that. As far as the partners go, that's too much nuance to say on a podcast. I maybe tell them, maybe don't. It depends on what's going on. But your key employees, that's number one. Number two, you need to understand what the levers are that you can pull to improve your business and how fast they actually can be pulled. Going back to customer concentration, that can take 3, 5, 6 years, depending on what's going on. It can take a long, long time. If it's something like you just haven't updated your financials, maybe a year, right? So you got to understand that. So get those ducks in a row. It's not hard to find out what those things are. It's just understanding them and then how long it takes to improve them. The third thing is, we've talked about it a bunch. The more that you're not important to the business, the more it sells for. Because it's very pragmatic when you work it out. You're less likely to have customer concentration if you have one employee managing it, because that employee could leave and take your customers. You're going to have more SOPs if you're not involved, because you now don't want to know everything. You want your employees to know stuff. And so the less you're involved, the more you can sell for. So I would say, hey, set the bonuses up. You're going to ask them to get you a bunch of money, pay them as well. You can actually increase your probably value a little bit of what you want to get, because you're going to get bonuses. Understand the leverage you can pull, and then remove yourself from the business, because that on itself is going to raise the valuation that you get.
No, I love that. And I'm going to add one more that almost like is a pre-number, is get your professional team in place. Because the only way you're going to know what levers to pull in your business to increase valuation are with another good professional telling you what's what. It could be that fractional CFO. It could be someone like Ryan. The only reason you're going to know how much you need after the business exit to fund your lifestyle is with some hard math from professionals, and really optimizing that. Talking about like incentivizing team, that might be like a incentives consultant or something like that. So the only way you're going to know this stuff is start putting the professional team together that's going to help you and help you think about the business. And the example I always give is sometimes it takes a bird to tell a fish they're in water, right? And it's like when we're in the day to day as a business owner, you're just always in the weeds. You just always are, and you need people who can pull you out to help you see what they see. You may agree, you may disagree. That's all okay.
Yeah,
that's all okay. But you need to have the conversations.
I tell owners all the time, you're an expert at roofing or manufacturing or whatever it might be. That's your expertise. I'm not going to tell you how to do that better. What I'm going to do is tell you what I understand. And then we're trying to mesh those two. And then we got to understand what you're trying to do, right? So it's a very much okay, here's the levers that we have. And each owner has unique levers that they can pull. They're unique in the sense of one might have great talent, but he hasn't figured out customer concentration. Okay, well, that's a unique lever. It still falls on those buckets, but it's like, okay, and going back to sports, I would just finally say this, that if you watch sports, and you don't see this as much anymore, But I always use Rich Rodriguez. When he left West Virginia, went to Michigan, he tried to bring the West Virginia system to Michigan, and it didn't work. Instead of saying, okay, here's Michigan, we're going to build to what we used to do, and then have that work, he tried to implement it day one. So there is no cookie cutter framework. It's trying to understand the players on the team, the division, all this stuff, and then build it a little bit to tweak for what the owner has. And if you don't have these experts, you haven't done this stuff, you're going to just buy a framework or get something and go, okay, cool, I did that. It's like, no, it's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more nuanced than that. So I agree.
It's your most important asset. It's okay asking for some help, frankly, and giving it the care and attention it deserves, because it can benefit you, just like some of the examples you shared on this podcast. So, hey, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. This was awesome. I've been looking forward to this episode for a long time, and it was fun to finally get a chance to talk to you. We'll share some links about Ryan in the episode notes, the show notes. So check those out. Maybe we'll be able to get to that PDF you mentioned. And then obviously thank you for all you listening. Please subscribe, and we'll be back here in a couple weeks.